Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 5. We got to talk about the fight. Like, that we can just sort of dance around a lot of different things here, like at the start of this video, but let's all be honest, in the aftermath of what we just saw.
I hope that everyone's got their hard hats on because this is not going to be your typical Yellowstone review, especially at this channel. This is a show that Matt and I
Yeah.
really enjoy. We've loved it since the start, but this season, oh, woof, this episode, oh no, what is going on? There is some problems in this episode.
We're we're going to talk through these problems. This is a episode full of mess. Gator has brought out a table full of mess for us to dive into and enjoy. But before we do, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss any other Yellowstone reviews, breakdowns, hot takes we're gonna have through the rest of this. It's really crazy to say, but like the first half of season 5 is almost already at an end.
We're also covering NCIS, Criminal Minds, all kinds of other stuff here at the channel. So hit that subscribe button and stick with us, and follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jess. This is Matt.
All right, we just got to start into this meal here. There's just everything about this meal was weird. In particular, I mean, we're gonna talk about Summer a ton in this video, like, but
Oh, Summer, the woman we all love to hate.
it's so weird because it's just like, random story, but Piper Perabo, who plays Summer, used to be on Covert Affairs, and I was on the set one time. She's so nice, and this character she plays is so like easy, I think, for a lot of people to loathe. But a part of the big problem here is the way that she's being written. So let's set our metaphorical table here for a moment as we get into the first major problem that went on in this scene.
Mhm.
So she's there at the Dutton house where basically, in her own words, she's being kept prisoner because
Mhm.
she's on house arrest. So
Yeah.
she goes to dinner, and I think the moment that every person sits down at this dinner, you've got, of course, Beth. We're all thinking, all right, disaster is a coming. But then Summer immediately, without hesitation, just begins shaming everybody for the food that's on the table, for the meat, the animal product. I mean, all of that sort of stuff. And I think on one side of the coin, we can be like, okay, this is really predictable. This is the sort of character who's been set up. However, I'm gonna put a big caution sort of tape on this because I've known a number of vegetarians, vegans. I've known, people with all sorts of different diets. I've never in my life seen somebody who was invited somewhere else for dinner, a place that is not their own, and then just immediately tears into every single thing that they're serving. Now, it's fine, it's understandable if you do not want to eat those things. That is your right to not want to do that. Maybe you make a comment or two, but then maybe you go and you figure something else out. But it's just the way that they wrote her as just sort of badgering, and this is all important because it sets the stage for the fight.
Mhm.
It was so unbelievable. I know Summer is a character. She has not always been set up with the most self-awareness in the world. That is clear.
No, she was so rude, and it was unbelievable. I know people who are vegans, vegetarians, activists. No one's coming over to somebody's house and being like, "How dare you?" And let me question this and question that, and be rude to the host, be rude to the person who's making your food. At the very most, somebody might be like, "Hey, I have a dietary restriction. Is there anything else that's in the kitchen?" This was so unbelievable that I was like, okay, they obviously needed to set her up
Yeah.
for the next part of this, which is my biggest complaint of this whole episode, which is the fight. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there that are like, yeah, Summer, got the brakes beat off of her. Yeah, we all want to see that happen. Okay, that's fine. And yes, lots of people want to see that happen. However, they set this fight up for Beth to lose. So Beth comes out, they go outside, they
Yeah.
start fighting, and we've got Beth being like, oh, well, I got some brothers, so I can fight. Listen, Beth, I also have some brothers and they can fight, but I can't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. There's no way. Like, I know I look like a threat, but I am not.
Well, you're not a threat.
No, so unless like Casey or Jamie is like taking Beth outside as a kid and tuning her up. Like, I don't know how them being able to fight makes Beth be able to fight. I'm sure that there was some sort of roughhousing because brothers will sometimes not know that they shouldn't be roughhousing with their sisters, but that's not the same. And we've seen Beth in some bar fights, and that's fine. I
Yeah.
feel like Beth can handle herself. However, this is where we get into the real problems of
Yeah.
this fight. Then we have Summer say, I have 9 years of jujitsu. So she is a master. When you get to 9, 10 years, you are the equivalent of a black belt. So you're going to have somebody who's like, I have experience fighting because I roughhouse with my brothers and I get into some bar fights. To, I am a master in jujitsu. I have 9 years. And for those of you who don't know a lot about jujitsu, I know quite a bit about it, even though I'm not in jujitsu. The thing about this particular sport or martial art or fighting style is that it's very different than like, I know karate or I know kung fu. This particular fighting style is meant to be for street fighting or bar fighting, real life situations. So it's meant for Beth that the minute that you hit the ground, and all fights hit the ground, jujitsu is when it comes into play. Because once you're on the ground, jujitsu is all about then chokes, breaking people's limbs, putting people into submission. And if she has 9 years, Beth was never winning this fight. And that's why I was watching this fight and she was like, oh, I have 9 years of jujitsu. I'm like, oh, as soon as that fight hits the ground, Beth is done. We're actually going to see Beth lose this fight. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And I still don't believe it because then it turns out that like Beth beat somebody who's a master in jujitsu. Get out of here. That is not the way that it's ever going to be.
Yellowstone. Oh my sweet, sweet Yellowstone. What have you done to yourself? This
Oh, then it gets worse. So then you have, Beth has beaten the brakes off of Summer. Everyone's like, yay. Okay. Then they go inside and now Summer is completely submissive. She goes inside, takes some potatoes. Beth is like, oh, there's probably some butter on there. And she's like, F it. I don't care. Pass over the butter. You might as well pass it over the dove. Let me eat a whole bee. Like she's just given up every single thing that she has stood for because she got beaten up. No way. She would have probably gone in and been like, hey, Gator, I know I was really rude to you earlier, but like, can you boil me a potato or where's your kitchen? Can I go and grab something? Under no circumstances is a vegan just all of a sudden going to be like, pass the butter.
Okay, so
this was so poorly written. I'm really, disappointed in this.
All right, so if you
As
guys
might be able to tell. Thank you for waiting for my rant here, guys.
Let us know in the comments here, like, should Summer have won the fight given that she had 9 freaking years of jujitsu? Like, give us your breakdown on that. Yeah, hit the subscribe button if you love discussions like this, because we are going to dive full in, good or bad, with every single episode. We're going to tell you guys the truth, and this is sort of where I pick up on a couple of the things that you're saying, and just that Taylor Sheridan, my guy, I think you're doing too much. And I say this out of love because you've created a great show.
Yep.
1883 was pretty good. You've got, I know you're not show running all these other things like Tulsa King, Mayor of Kingstown, like all this stuff, but you have so many things under your umbrella. You have basically like stretched yourself out too thin. And I think it's led to this situation where you've created all these sort of like weird situations with your writing that are self-inflicted wounds. Like let's go into the jujitsu rant that you gave for a minute, which is totally unbelievably justified. Like I I'm not as knowledgeable at jujitsu or some of this stuff as you are, so he might have been able to sort of get away with this with somebody like me, but I think that's a part of the problem is he could have easily just put out any other martial art out there that's not as serious about fighting.
Or none.
Yeah,
He could have just left none. She didn't have to say anything, and then the whole fight would have been completely believable.
he just put himself in a bad corner because I think he felt like he had to say something to make it look like activist Summer had a chance in the fight. But he went to such an extreme and came up with something that was just not believable in this instance. And then you get to, the, oh, I'll have the potatoes with the butter moment, which then, once again, is him trying to do something that he doesn't have to. Like, I think what he's probably trying to do, the picture he's trying to paint here is that Summer is just frustrated, tired, just ultimately like screw it. I don't want to go up and do anything else. I'll just eat what's up. But it doesn't really work. It's just not something where she's not going to do that. It's not like she is on an island miles away from a kitchen, miles away from anybody who can do anything. The kitchen's right freaking there.
Yeah, listen, people who have gone through picking certain ways that they eat, so veganism
Yeah.
or vegetarianism, you can't just all of a sudden eat a stick of butter or eat, an entire dove. You're gonna get really sick. I've actually watched this happen to people before, and it's very that's why it's really unbelievable. Like, I have celiac disease, so I can't have gluten, which really sucks because I love donuts.
Yeah.
And that would be like me going in and being like, F it. I'm gonna eat all these dinner rolls because they're just on the table and make myself sick instead of walking, 50 feet to the kitchen and making something else.
This whole sequence, this is where the disappointment really comes in because it could have been easily a lot different. And I think the moment we all saw everybody sit down for dinner, I think we were all really, really excited about what it could have been, especially through the picture of, there's this big, cattle expedition that's about to be undertook.
Yes.
Like that, all of that. I wish there was more of that in this episode, by the way, because it's like that prospect, just as from like a Western aesthetic perspective, is really, really cool.
Oh, it's so cool. I'm really hoping that this next episode is all about that. Like, it was such a cool setup and watching them all right away. Like, it was really cool. I really hope that that's the whole next episode. I don't want to see anybody else. I don't want to see Summer. I don't want to see anybody back at the ranch. I don't want to see Jamie and the nonsense that's going on over there. I just want to see a full episode of them being out there being cowboys.
Okay, it is time for a very brief Jamie sidebar. Here's what's going. Okay, I shouldn't say here's what's going on as though I have all the answers, but here's what I think is going on here. So Sarah is, I think, deluded in her belief that she can manipulate Jamie to the point where he is going to do something that completely either undermines his reputation, wrecks the state, and then it all kind of like trickles down a little bit to John Dutton, and then John gets in trouble, and ultimately they mire themselves in so much corruption and so much just like nefariousness that John either loses his position as governor or somebody just like yanks everything out from under him. And it's a diabolical plan, I guess, but it's also a plan that has way too many different components in it, and I just don't see how this is really going to work.
Yeah, I don't really get what Sarah's plan is. And we're in episode 5 now.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I really think that the audience should be let in a little bit more on what her plan is, because all she's doing is hooking up with Jamie. And I understand that they're on opposite sides of this dispute. So if she's hooking up with Jamie, like, the worst thing that I think can really come out of it is that he's unable to continue to work on this. And he's not the only person that can be put into work on this. Like, if there was something else where maybe they were setting up that they had the next person that would come in and work on this, and it was somebody that was working with them or something, but it's like, okay, you're sleeping with Jamie. Is this really a scandal? No, not really, not in this day and age. And it's just not going to really get to what Caroline wanted, which is get Beth.
Yeah.
It's not even really get the whole family. I mean, that's a bonus, but it was really like destroy Beth's life. And sleeping with Jamie doesn't do anything.
No, because it's like, you know who Beth does not care about at all, and beyond that, you know who Beth also wants to destroy? Jamie! It's like in some weird roundabout way, they're almost on the same page here.
Yeah, which would actually be a really interesting storyline if Sarah just doesn't realize that Jamie is so on the outs with the family because all she's seen is like kind of this picture of him in video where he looks unhappy, but that doesn't mean that he's not part of the family or he's not dedicated to the family. We know that he's not really, but she doesn't know anything about him. So it would be interesting if she's like, "Oh, I'm going to turn the sun against them." And then they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, and so we're fine with that. And so let's also get into this discussion that Rip and John had, which I thought was really interesting. Where, earlier on we saw John tell Clara that he only has one son. She was like, "Oh, there's Casey, is that your youngest son?" "It's my only son." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Then why is Jamie been with you on all this like campaign stuff, governor stuff? Like he's really involved in your life still. That's a pretty bold thing to say." Then we have this talk with Rip and John where he's like, "Yeah, I have one kid that I really miss, one kid that I pity, one that I regret, and one that I envy." And I was just like, "Okay, let's break it down."
this this is bizarre, and it's bizarre in a couple of different ways. I mean, the kid John's misses obviously is his late son. Like
Mhm,
that part of it is unbelievably clear. We
mhm.
don't even have to dive too much into that.
Yeah, and the kid that he regrets is
Yeah,
obviously Jamie. Jamie is not the kid that he's already like, I don't have another son."
yeah,
Okay, well, fine then.
yeah,
We know that the kid that he envies is Beth, where I
yeah.
was just like, "Really?" And even his explanation where he was like, "Oh, she's so wild and free." I'm just like, she's not free. She is someone who is very angry, very upset, very hard on herself, self-sabotaging, unhappy person. You envy that? Like, I'm not like a person who doesn't like Beth. I like Beth quite a lot. She's a really interesting character, but she is not a happy character, and that's not a frame of mind that I would think John would envy. Then we get to the kid that he pities,
Yeah.
and that would be Casey. And that's really a weird word to use because Casey's life is not anything to pity. He's part of a very powerful family. He, has a job that he's, enjoys fairly well, but he also has a wife that he truly loves, a son that he truly loves. He's in a very tight knit, dedicated family. Like he's not someone to pity. Losing his son is something to sympathize with
Yeah.
and, that you want to give care to, but pity? I don't know, it was a little weird.
It's not a good choice of words. At least that's just my opinion. Or this is intentionally Taylor sort of saying that, John's perception of things is off kind of across the board here because, I think, as you said, his perception about Beth is off. Like, Beth is
To
not.
me, to
I,
me, this is my opinion. I
well,
don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think she's wild and free and someone to be envied?
I don't.
Maybe. Maybe.
Like, I think she is totally a prisoner of her own making. I think she is someone who is just frequently suffering. And yes, Casey is dealing with mourning and grief and like an unspeakable tragedy right now. But if I sort of just think in like the macro sense of everything, he is the Dutton I would most want to be. And I say that in the sense of, he's got his own little family who seems to love and care about him very much. He's got some distance from the ranch. It seems like he's actually doing something that he would much rather be doing. It seems like he has carved out his own little life for himself and he has found an element of happiness. Yes, this is Yellowstone. Yes, that also means that someone is going to come and take that happiness away. But, like, in theory, I would rather be Casey. I would not pity Casey at all. And so, John, I think he is just deluded. And I think he also has this sort of idea in his head that power equals happiness or that level of responsibility equals happiness. And because Casey isn't chasing that, then he doesn't value it the same way.
Yeah.
this So this episode overall, I think we're obviously pretty critical about a lot of it. I think one of the other big problems is just it doesn't move a lot of the sort of bigger story arcs this season forward in any way.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, this episode was not it. It wasn't hitting for me. It was like a 2 out of 10. But if they are setting up this next episode to be all the cowboys out,
Mhm.
on this mission, this next episode is being set up to be a 10 out of 10.
It will be for me if we do have continuations of everything we just talked about, and then also where the bleep are the bunkhouse guys? Like, in
They're getting
theater,
ready to go out.
they okay, yeah, maybe they are, but it's like, if our interaction of the bunkhouse is just like we get like a small scene of like Carter with Summer and then like Lloyd saying ma'am at Summer, and it's like that's basically it for an episode.
I love the Bunkhouse Boys. I could watch a whole show about them. You've got all these spin-offs coming up. Like, can't you give me the Bunkhouse Boys?
Please, like that just would be so much fun. And I think not having that fun in this episode and then weighing it down with all these things that are kind of questionable and don't make a whole lot of sense. That's where we are with episode 5. But guess what? There's another episode in a week. This is your chance to turn this around. And I say this as though it has not already been filmed and probably edited.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.